The night was quiet, the sky filled with stars, and the small wooden house stood alone at the edge of the forest. Inside the house sat a man, a widower. His name was Daniel. He was in his late 40s, his hair carried streaks of gray, and his eyes carried the weight of sorrow. He looked out the window, holding a picture frame in his hand. The picture showed a smiling woman and a small child, both gone now, taken by a car accident years ago. Daniel often sat like this, staring at the photograph, wishing for the warmth of family again. The world around him had moved on, but his heart was still trapped in the past. Suddenly, the silence of the night was broken. A strange sound filled the air. It was not thunder. It was not the sound of planes. It was something else. A deep roar mixed with sharp crackles. Daniel stood up, his heart racing. Through the window, he saw a streak of fire rushing across the sky, cutting through the stars like a burning arrow. It was heading straight for the forest near his home. The crash came moments later, shaking the ground beneath his feet. Trees in the distance lit up as something slammed into the earth. Sparks flew, smoke rose into the night. Daniel grabbed his flashlight and coat. His instincts told him to stay inside, but his heart pushed him forward. He could not ignore what had just happened. The forest was dark, branches snapped under his boots, and the air smelled of smoke and metal. He reached a clearing where the soil was torn apart, and there in the middle of the crater lay something impossible. It was not a plane. It was not a meteor. It was something alive. Daniel froze, his breath caught in his chest. Lying in the dirt was a girl, but not a human girl. Her skin glowed faintly blue under the moonlight. Her eyes shimmered like liquid silver. Her hair flowed like strands of light. She wore a strange suit, torn and sparking. With broken technology, she coughed weakly, clutching her side where blood, dark and alien, stained the ground. Daniel's first thought was fear. Was she dangerous? Was she even real? Then he saw the pain on her face, the fear in her glowing eyes. She was not an invader at that moment. She was a wounded being in need of help. Daniel slowly stepped closer, his flashlight trembling in his hand. "Can you hear me?" he whispered, his voice unsure. The girl opened her mouth, but no words came, only strange sounds. She reached a hand toward him, her fingers shaking. Sparks danced across her broken suit, then faded. Before Daniel could decide, a sharp noise came from above. He looked up and saw lights moving across the sky, small dark shapes with red beams scanning the forest. Drones. He did not know if they were human or alien, but he knew one thing. They were searching for her. The girl's glowing eyes widened in terror. She tried to crawl but collapsed. Daniel felt his heart pounding. He looked at the drones, then at the girl. He thought of his wife, his child, and how he had failed to protect them. Now another life lay before him, helpless and alone. Without another thought, he dropped his flashlight and lifted the girl into his arms. She was light, almost weightless, yet he could feel the heat of her wound burning against his chest. She gasped but did not resist. Branches cracked behind him. The drones were getting closer. Their beams cut through the trees. Daniel pushed forward, stumbling through the forest, his breath heavy. The girl clung weakly to him, her silver eyes watching his face. He reached his home, rushed inside, and closed the door. His heart thundered as he looked around the small living room. He had no idea what to do, no idea how to treat an alien wound. But he knew one thing: if the drones found her, she would not survive. He laid her gently on the couch, the glow from her skin faint against the old cushions. She whispered something, soft and broken, words he could not understand, yet the fear and trust in her tone were clear. Daniel moved quickly, shutting the curtains, turning off the lights, hiding the house in darkness. Outside, the drones hovered, their red beams sweeping across the ground. Daniel held his breath, standing near the couch. The girl's hand reached for his, her fingers cold but alive. The drones passed, their sound fading into the distance. Silence returned. But it was not the same silence as before. The night now carried a secret that could change Daniel's life forever. He looked down at the alien girl, her silver eyes closing as she fell into unconsciousness, and he whispered to himself, "What have I done?" But deep inside, for the first time in years, Daniel felt something he thought was lost, the fragile spark of purpose, the beginning of something unknown, something dangerous, something that could give him a reason to live again. The house was quiet, shadows stretching across the walls. Daniel sat in his chair, watching the strange girl lying on his old couch, her skin still glowing faintly, her breathing slow but steady. He had covered her with a blanket, though he wondered if she even needed warmth the way humans did. He leaned forward, studying her face. She looked young, perhaps no older than his daughter would have been. Her silver eyes opened for a moment, shining softly in the dim light. She whispered something, words that melted into sounds he could not understand. Still, the tone was gentle, almost like a question. Daniel stood and went to the kitchen, pouring a glass of water. When he returned, the girl had tried to sit up, her hand shaking as she touched the strange sparks on her torn suit. He placed the glass near her, and she tilted her head curiously. He lifted it to her lips, and she sipped, coughing but drinking, as if her body was learning how to accept the water. Outside, the night was not calm. Daniel could hear the faint hum of drones far away, patrolling, searching. He kept the lights off, only a small lamp burning by the couch. In that moment, the world felt smaller, like the house was the only safe place left. The girl pointed weakly to her suit, then to his toolbox by the wall. Daniel hesitated, then brought it. She pulled a strange shard from her clothing, a glowing piece of alien technology. It pulsed like a broken heart. With trembling hands, she used a screwdriver to adjust something. Sparks flew. Daniel stepped back, afraid she might explode it, but then the shard dimmed and grew stable. She looked at him, her lips curving slightly, not quite a smile, but close. Daniel realized she was not helpless, she was clever. She was trying to fix herself. Over the next hours, the girl explored the room with her eyes, touching the couch fabric, the wooden table, the old clock on the wall. She pointed at the picture frame Daniel had left nearby, the picture of his wife and child. Daniel froze, then slowly picked it up, showing her, his voice breaking as he said, "Family." The girl repeated softly, "Lie." Her accent strange, her voice fragile. Daniel felt a shock in his chest. She was trying to learn. She pointed at herself, tapping her chest, whispering a name. It was hard for Daniel to catch. The sounds were fluid, alien, but he tried, repeating clumsily. She nodded, her silver eyes brightening. Then she pointed at him. Daniel hesitated, then answered, "Daniel." For the first time in years, he felt like someone was listening, truly listening, not with pity, not with distance, but with new eyes, alien eyes. Days passed in careful silence. Daniel hid her from the world, closing the curtains, avoiding neighbors. The girl recovered slowly, her wound healing faster than any human wound could, her glowing skin shining more brightly each night. She learned small words, water, food, light, and she gave Daniel alien words in return, words that carried strange beauty. But every night, danger lingered. Drones still flew above the forest, sometimes shining their red beams close to his land. Daniel would hold his breath, sitting beside the girl, waiting for them to pass. The fear was constant, but so was the bond growing between them. One morning, Daniel found her sitting at his workbench, his old tools scattered around. She was sketching on scraps of paper, shapes and symbols that looked nothing like human designs, circles within circles, lines that curved in impossible patterns. She held up the page to him, her eyes hopeful. "I build," she said, her voice firmer now. Daniel frowned, not understanding. She tapped the paper again. "I build future." The word struck him. Future. Daniel felt the weight of it. He had not thought about his own future in years, not since the day he lost his family. He had lived in silence, in survival. But the morning sun spilled softly into the small house. Daniel sat at the table with a cup of coffee, though the drink had long gone cold. Across from him, the alien girl traced her glowing fingers over the picture frame, studying the faces of his wife and daughter as if they were a puzzle she wanted to solve. She looked up at him with silver eyes and asked, her voice broken but clear enough, "They gone?" Daniel's chest tightened. He nodded slowly. "Yes, gone," he whispered, the weight of that truth pressing on him again. The girl tilted her head, her glowing hair sliding over her shoulder. "Family. No more," she said. Daniel swallowed hard. "No more," he admitted, his voice raw. She placed the picture gently back on the table and whispered, "Sad." Daniel had not spoken of them in years, not to anyone. Yet now, here was a stranger, not even human, who carried his grief as if it were her own. He felt the wall around his heart crack, just a little. Later that day, she walked around the living room, Her bare feet quiet on the old wooden floor, she touched objects carefully, as though each was precious. The clock, the books, the small carved bird Daniel had made long ago. She pointed at it, curious. Daniel explained softly. I carved this, with my hands. He mimed cutting with a knife. The girl's eyes lit up. Create, she said proudly. You create. She placed the bird back and tapped her own chest. I create, too. She rushed to the table, gathering scraps of paper, pens, and even old newspapers. She began sketching lines and circles, shapes that made no sense to Daniel. Her hands moved quickly, drawing designs that looked alive, curved pathways, strange machines, symbols of energy. Daniel watched in silence. Her expression was filled with focus, with purpose. She wanted to build, not destroy. That night, as Daniel sat by the fire, she sat near him, her blanket wrapped around her glowing body. She asked him to speak of the photo again. Tell, she said, pointing. Daniel's throat tightened. But slowly he began. He told her about his wife, how she loved to sing while cooking, how her laughter filled the house. He told her about his daughter, how she used to chase butterflies in the garden, how she once fell asleep holding his hand. The girl listened without moving, her silver eyes reflecting the firelight. When he finished, there were tears in her eyes. Though he was not sure if her kind truly wept, she whispered, Family, strong. Then she spoke of her own world, her words broken, but the meaning clear. Her people lived in ships, endless war, endless conquest, no songs, no laughter, only survival. She said family was nothing, just weakness to them. She looked down, ashamed. Not same, she said. I want different. Daniel's heart ached. He reached out, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. Her glowing skin was warm. You are different, he said. You are trying to build a better way. She looked at him with something new in her eyes, something like hope. The next day, she spent hours at the workbench, tools scattered everywhere. She stripped old machines, radios, wires. She mixed them with glowing shards from her broken suit. Daniel tried to help, though most of it made no sense. He held tools, cut wood, fetched what she pointed at. Together, they became a strange team. In the evenings, she would sit outside the door with him, watching the stars. She pointed up at constellations, whispering alien names for each. Daniel told her the human names, Orion, Cassiopeia, the Big Dipper. Sometimes they laughed at how different and strange the names sounded. But the peace was not complete. Sometimes Daniel felt the hair on his neck rise, like unseen eyes were watching. Once he saw a shadow move beyond the tree line. Tall and silent, gone before he could blink. He kept this from her, not wanting her to worry, yet deep inside he knew the danger was growing. One night, as the fire crackled low, she drew closer, her silver eyes reflecting sorrow. Daniel, you lonely, she said softly. He looked away, his heart heavy. Yes, he admitted, I am lonely. She placed her glowing hand over his, her touch gentle. I, too, she whispered. For the first time since his family's death, Daniel felt something stir inside him. Not the same as before, but something new, fragile, a connection forming across impossible distance. Later that night, as she slept on the couch, Daniel stood by the window, watching the forest. The moonlight painted the trees silver. He thought of the designs she made, the machine she wanted to build, a future she dreamed of. Could it really work? Could she truly build something that changed everything? He turned back to the couch, to the girl who had fallen from the stars, and he whispered to himself, Maybe this is why you came here. But as he whispered, far in the distance, a faint red light blinked between the trees, a drone hovering, patient, watching. The sun rose slowly over the forest, its light creeping into the small wooden house. Daniel sat at the table, his hands around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Across from him, the alien girl held the picture frame carefully, her silver eyes studying the faces inside it. She traced the lines of his wife's smile and his daughter's small hand as if she wanted to understand what those expressions meant. She looked at Daniel and spoke softly, her words still broken but clear enough. They, gone. Daniel nodded, his throat tightening. Yes, gone, he whispered, the truth pressing on him heavier than the air. The girl tilted her head, glowing hair falling forward. Family. No more, she said. Daniel stared at her, then lowered his gaze. No more, he admitted, the word carrying both pain and emptiness. She placed the photo gently back on the table and whispered, sad. Daniel had avoided this conversation with people for years, but this being, not even human, carried his grief with her glowing eyes as though it mattered. His heart felt fragile, like something long locked away was beginning to stir again. Later that day she wandered around the small house, touching objects with care, her hands running along the shelves, the clock, the rough wood of the table. She picked up a carved bird, the one Daniel had made many years ago. She pointed at it and asked, "What?" Daniel explained, "I made this, with hands, with knife," and he mimed carving. The girl's eyes brightened. "Create," she said, her voice firm. "You create." She tapped her chest. "I create too." She hurried to the table, gathering scraps of paper, pens, and even pieces of newspaper. She began to sketch lines and symbols. They flowed into shapes that curved and twisted, designs Daniel had never seen. Her hand moved fast, glowing faintly as she drew. Daniel leaned closer. The patterns looked like machines. But not human ones. Energy flows, circles within circles, paths that looked alive. She finished one and looked up proudly. "Build," she said. "Build future." The word struck Daniel deep inside. Future. It was a word he had not thought about in years. His own future had ended the day he lost his family. But here was a girl from another world speaking of creating one. That night, she sat near the fire, her blanket wrapped around her. She pointed again at the photo. "Tell," she said. Daniel's throat tightened, but slowly he began to speak. He told her how his wife loved to sing while cooking, how her laughter filled the house. He told her how his daughter ran through the garden chasing butterflies, how she once fell asleep in his arms. The girl listened in silence, her silver eyes reflecting the flames. When he finished, she touched her face and whispered a word in her own tongue, her voice trembling. Daniel did not know its meaning, but he felt it was something like sorrow, something like longing, she whispered in broken English. Family. Strong. Then she spoke of her world, her words clumsy, but the message clear. Her people fought wars, endless battles, ships and weapons, no laughter, no songs, no family. She lowered her eyes, ashamed. Not same, she said. I want different. Daniel reached across the space between them, placing his hand on her shoulder, her skin warm with a soft glow. You are different, he said. You are trying to build, not destroy. She looked up at him, and for the first time he saw hope in her eyes. The days that followed grew busier. She spent long hours at his workbench, tools scattered everywhere, wires pulled from old radios, broken machines taken apart. She mixed them with glowing shards from her suit. Daniel tried to help where he could, holding tools, cutting wood, following her hand gestures. Together they worked like a team, though neither fully understood the other. At night, they sat outside beneath the stars. She pointed at constellations, whispering alien names. Daniel shared the human ones, Orion, Cassiopeia, the Big Dipper. Sometimes they laughed, the sounds strange and warm, two worlds colliding under the same sky. But danger was never far. Sometimes Daniel felt watched. Shadows moved at the edge of the forest. Once he thought he saw a tall shape between the trees, still and silent. Gone the moment he blinked. He told her nothing, but she seemed to feel it too. Her glow dimming whenever the night grew too quiet. One evening, she looked at him and said softly, Daniel, you lonely? He hesitated, then nodded. Yes, lonely. Her glowing hand reached for his, her voice small. I, too. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something shift inside him, not the same as before, but something fragile, a bond forming across the impossible distance between their worlds. That night, as she slept curled on the couch, Daniel stood by the window, the moon painting the forest silver. He thought of her drawings, her dreams of building a better way. He whispered to himself, maybe this is why you came here. Far beyond the trees, a red light flickered once, steady and patient, a drone, waiting. The night was restless. Daniel could not sleep. The alien girl lay on the couch, her silver eyes closed, her breathing soft. But he kept hearing sounds outside, faint snaps of branches, the low hum of machines drifting through the forest air. He moved the curtain just enough to peek. His heart sank. Red beams cut through the trees, slow and searching. The drones were closer now, closer than ever before. Daniel's grip tightened on the curtain. He whispered under his breath, "They found us." He hurried to the couch, shaking the girl gently. "Wake up," he said, his voice low but urgent. Her eyes opened, glowing faintly, confusion in them, then fear when she heard the sound outside. She whispered something in her own language, quick and sharp, her glow dimming as if her body tried to hide itself. Daniel pointed to the back door. "We need to go, now." She sat up, weak but determined, grabbing the small bundle of strange tools and papers she had kept close. They slipped out into the cold night, Daniel leading, the girl following close. The forest stretched dark and endless, the hum of drones growing louder, red beams sweeping through the branches. Daniel pulled her down as one passed overhead, its light burning through the trees, scanning, searching. He held his breath, her glowing hand clutching his arm tightly. When the light moved on, Daniel whispered, "Run." And they ran, feet crashing through leaves, lungs burning. Behind them, the forest lit up with red light. The drones had spotted movement, sharp alarms echoed. Daniel's heart pounded like a drum, branches whipped against his face, roots grabbed at his boots. But he kept going, pulling her with him. She stumbled once, almost falling, but he caught her, dragging her forward. Ahead, the trees began to thin. The outline of the old road appeared, broken asphalt under the moonlight. The drones burst from the fours. T behind them, metal wings cutting the air, red beams slashing across the ground. Daniel and the girl dove into the ditch by the road. Beams scorched the earth where they had just been, smoke and sparks filling the night. The girl pulled something from her bundle, a small shard glowing with unstable light. She twisted it in her hands, sparks flying. She tossed it toward the road. Daniel covered his head as the shard exploded with a burst of white light. The drones swerved, blinded, their scanners disrupted. "Go!" she shouted, her voice stronger than before. Daniel pulled her up. They ran along the ditch, the forest stretching endlessly, more drones sweeping in from the sky. Daniel knew they could not run forever. He looked at the bundle in her arms, the designs, the tools, the strange glowing shards. "Do you have anything else?" he asked breathlessly. She shook her head, her eyes desperate. "Not ready," she said. Daniel cursed under his breath. They reached the ruins of an old barn, its roof half collapsed, walls leaning. Daniel pulled her inside, crouching low, the smell of rot and dust thick in the air. Outside, the drones hovered, red light spilling across the ground, searching. Daniel pressed his back against the wall, the girl beside him, her silver eyes wide, her hand clutching the papers close to her chest. The beams passed by the barn, lingering, scanning. Daniel held his breath until his lungs screamed. One beam slid through a broken window, crawling across the floor. He pushed the girl down, covering her glowing body with his own. The beam stopped inches away, then moved on, finally fading. For a moment, silence returned, only the sound of their ragged breathing. Daniel looked at her, sweat dripping down his face. "They won't stop," he said. She shook her head slowly. "They want me." Her voice breaking, Daniel grabbed her shoulder. "Why?" he asked. "Why you?" she whispered. Not soldier. Not killer. I want build." She looked down at her designs, her silver eyes glowing with tears. "They fear that they want destroy dream." Daniel stared at her, the truth settling in his chest like a stone. She was not just running for her life, she was running for her future, for something greater. If they caught her, it would not just be her death, it would be the death of everything she hoped to create. The sound of engines grew louder, not just drones this time, but heavy vehicles. The road rumbling as they drew closer. Daniel pulled her toward the back of the barn. "We need to move," he said. She nodded, clutching her papers tighter. They slipped out into the night again, the forest swallowing them, running, stumbling, gasping. Every sound around them felt sharper, every shadow deeper. The world had turned into a hunt, and they were the prey. Daniel's body ached, his lungs burned, but he kept going, not for himself, but for her. For the fragile hope she carried, the designs in her hands, the dream she spoke of. He thought of his wife, his daughter, the family. He lost, and he realized something. He would not lose this too, not while he still had strength to fight. As they disappeared deeper into the forest, red beams spread across the trees behind them, shadows of machines closing in, the night alive with pursuit. And somewhere above, far beyond the sky, something else was watching, waiting. The forest stretched wide and endless. Daniel and the alien girl moved carefully through shadows, until finally they found a place where the earth opened into a hollow cave, hidden beneath roots and moss. Inside it was dark, damp, and quiet. But it was safe for now. Daniel lit a small lantern, its glow pushing away the shadows. The girl sat down on a flat rock, her hands trembling as she held her bundle of papers and shards. Her silver eyes scanned the cave walls. She whispered, "Good. Hide." Daniel nodded, though his chest still pounded from the chase. Days passed in silence, broken only by the sound of tools. The girl began to work, spreading her designs across the stone floor. She gathered old wires Daniel had carried, broken parts from radios, shards from her suit. Each piece became part of something larger. Her glowing hands moved with focus, her voice murmuring alien words as she shaped the pieces. Daniel watched, at first confused, then amazed, the strange device growing before his eyes. It was not a weapon. It was not a bomb. It was something else. Its core glowed faintly, like a captured star. He asked her one evening, "What are you building?" She looked up at him, her face lit by the glow. "Future," she said simply. "Safe place. Not war, not fear. Place where build, grow, family." The word struck Daniel again, family. She spoke it with such longing, such hope, that his chest ached. He remembered his daughter's laughter, his wife's smile, the warmth that once filled his house. For years he had thought it gone forever, but now, sitting in a cave with an alien girl from another world, he felt a spark of it again. He began to help her, though he did not understand her designs. He carried stones, cut wood, twisted wires when she pointed. She guided his hands with patience, sometimes laughing softly when he made mistakes. Her laugh was quiet, but it carried leg. Into the cave. At night, after hours of work, they would rest near the lantern. She practiced words, pointing at things, Daniel teaching. She pointed at herself, saying her name again, clearer now. Then at him. "Daniel," she said with a small smile. Then she placed her glowing hand on her chest. "Family." Then on his chest. "Family." Daniel's eyes burned with tears. He whispered back, "Yes, family." The bond between them grew deeper, not of blood, not of the same world, but something stronger, built from trust and need, from the simple human desire to protect and be protected, but danger never left them. Sometimes they heard distant hums, the sound of drones in the sky. Sometimes they felt the ground shake from machines passing far above the cave. Each time, the girl dimmed her glow, pressing herself close to the shadows. Daniel stood guard, clutching a piece of wood like a weapon, though he knew it was useless against machines. One night, as the device pulsed brighter, Daniel asked, "Will it save you?" She looked at him, her silver eyes deep. "Not only me," she whispered. "Save dream, save all who want build, not destroy." Daniel nodded, though he did not fully understand. He believed her, but he also saw her exhaustion, her hands trembling, her body weaker each day. She was giving everything to this creation, pouring her strength, her light. Daniel worried. He wanted to tell her to stop, to rest, but he remembered the determination in her eyes, the way she clutched the picture of his family each night, as if it gave her strength. One evening, as the cave filled with the soft hum of the device, she sat close to Daniel, her head resting lightly against his shoulder. "You lost family," she whispered. "Now, we build new." Daniel froze, his heart pounding. She looked up at him, her silver eyes filled with quiet fire. "Not alone anymore." Daniel swallowed hard, his voice low. "No, not alone." For the first time in years, he felt something powerful, not grief, not emptiness, but purpose. He wanted to see her dream finished, no matter the cost. The device grew larger, more complex. glowing veins spreading through it like roots of light. Daniel asked once, "What will it do?" She answered slowly, "See," arching for words. "Home. Strong place. No one take away. No one break. Like family." Daniel's chest tightened. He touched the machine gently. "Then we'll finish it." But outside, danger crept closer. Unseen eyes still searched the forest, and whispers of engines moved through the night. The enemy had not given up. They were patient, waiting for the moment to strike. Daniel did not know how much time they had left, but he knew one truth. He would stand by her. He would fight if he had to, because in her dream of building, in her hope for family, he had found his reason to live again. And as the cave glowed brighter with her creation, Daniel whispered to himself, "We are building more than a machine. We are building a future." The cave glowed faintly with the strange machine the girl had built. Its core pulsed like a heartbeat, filling the stone walls with soft light. Daniel sat nearby, his eyes fixed on the entrance. He could not sleep, he could not rest. He knew their time was almost gone. The girl worked late into the night, her glowing fingers fitting shards together, sparks rising. She whispered words in her alien tongue, like prayers spoken to the machine. Daniel watched her, his chest tight with worry. Her body was weaker now, her glow dimmer, but her determination stronger than ever. Then, deep in the forest, the sound came, low at first, then rising, the growl of engines, the buzz of drones, the crunch of boots on the ground. Daniel stood, his fists clenching. "They're here," he whispered. The girl froze, her silver eyes wide. She looked at the machine, then at him. "Not ready," she said, fear trembling in her voice. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "We'll hold them," he said. "We'll buy time." She shook her head. "You. Only human, they strong." Daniel looked into her eyes, his voice firm. "Human heart is stronger." The first blast shook the earth. Dust fell from the cave ceiling. The mouth of the cave lit with red beams, shadows of soldiers and drones crawling closer. Daniel grabbed a heavy piece of wood, the only weapon he had. The girl clutched a shard of glowing crystal, her hands shaking. The enemy stormed the cave, drones flying in first, their scanners cutting through the dark. Daniel swung the wood, smashing one from the air. Sparks burst. Another drone fired a beam that scorched the stone beside him. The girl lifted the shard, pressing it, and it exploded with light, blinding the attackers for a moment. Soldiers entered, tall and armored, their voices sharp and cold. They shouted in a language Daniel did not know, their weapons glowing. Daniel roar. Ed charging forward, swinging with all his strength. The wood cracked against armor. Useless, but it slowed them for a breath. One soldier raised a weapon, aiming at the girl. Daniel threw himself in front of her. The blast hit him across the shoulder, fire ripping through flesh. He fell, gritting his teeth, but he pushed himself up again. He would not stop. The girl cried out, her silver eyes blazing with fury. She pressed another shard, sending out a wave of energy that knocked the soldiers back. The cave shook, rocks falling, dust blinding. Daniel grabbed her arm. "The machine, finish it," he shouted. She hesitated, tears glowing in her eyes. "You hurt." Daniel shook his head. "I'll hold them, go." She ran to the machine, her glowing hands moving fast, fitting the last pieces, connecting shards. Daniel stood in front of her, blood soaking his shirt, his body shaking, but he faced the soldiers again, raising the broken wood like a shield. More drones flew in, beams flashing. Daniel swung wildly, smashing one to the ground, sparks bursting across the floor. Soldiers advanced, their heavy steps shaking the cave. Daniel staggered, his strength fading, but in his eyes there was fire. "You won't take her," he growled. "Not her, not her dream." He charged, slamming into the nearest soldier, both crashing against the wall, the weapon clattering away. Daniel punched with everything left in him, again and again, until the soldier stopped moving. Behind him, the machine roared, its core glowing brighter. The girl's voice rose, chanting in her alien tongue, her body glowing like the machine itself. The cave filled with blinding light. The soldiers shielded their faces, shouting. The drones sparked and fell from the air. Daniel turned, watching her. She stood with her arms stretched over the machine, her glow burning brighter than ever, tears streaming down her cheeks. She looked at him one last time. "Daniel, family," she whispered. The machine erupted, light filling the cave, bursting through the forest, sweeping across the night sky. Soldiers and drones were thrown back like leaves in a storm. Engines silenced, beams gone. Daniel fell to his knees, the light warm around him, his body weak, his breath shallow, but he saw her, standing by the machine, her silver eyes glowing like stars. She had done it. She had finished it. The cave was silent again. The machine pulsed steady, alive. Daniel smiled faintly, though pain burned through him. "You built it," he whispered. She knelt beside him, holding his hand. "We built," she said, her voice breaking. Outside, the forest lay quiet, the enemy scattered, broken. The night no longer filled with the hum of machines. The dream had survived, but Daniel's body trembled, his eyes heavy. He looked at her, his voice soft. "Promise me, you'll keep building." She gripped his hand tighter. "I promise," she whispered. And in that cave, surrounded by light, a human widower and an alien girl stood together, holding not just survival, but the fragile birth of a future. The cave was quiet after the storm of light, the air thick with dust and the smell of scorched metal. Broken drones lay scattered across the ground, their wings twisted and sparks fading. The soldiers who had stormed inside were gone, thrown back into the forest by the force of the machine. Daniel sat slumped against the wall, blood staining his shoulder and chest, his breath shallow. The alien girl knelt beside him, her silver eyes glowing with worry. She held his hand tight, whispering words in her tongue, soft like prayers. Daniel tried to smile. "It's over," he whispered, his voice weak. "You did it." The machine stood in the center of the cave, glowing like a second sun, its light steady, alive. The girl looked at it with awe, her hands trembling. "We built future," she said softly. Daniel nodded, though his eyes were heavy. "Yes, future." But Daniel's body was failing. He felt the weight pulling him down, his strength slipping away. The girl shook her head, tears running down her glowing cheeks. "No, stay," she begged. "Family, stay." Daniel lifted a hand, brushing her arm weakly. "You are family now," he whispered. "You carry it forward." Her silver eyes shone brighter. "I promise," she said, her voice breaking. "I build, I protect, I remember." Daniel smiled faintly, the first true smile he had felt in years. "Good." "That's enough," he whispered. The light of the machine wrapped around them, warm and gentle. Daniel closed his eyes, his chest rising once more. Then falling into stillness, his hand slipping from hers, the girl cried out, clutching his hand, pressing her forehead to it, her tears glowing on his skin. For a long time, she stayed beside him, silent except for soft sobs. The machine hummed gently, as if mourning with her. The cave was filled with the weight of loss, but also the pulse of something new. When morning came, the girl carried Daniel's body to the edge of the forest. She buried him beneath a great oak tree. The picture of his wife and child placed gently on the soil. She whispered words of her world, then words of his. "Family," she said. "Forever." Her voice trembling. Days turned into weeks. The girl returned to the cave, working on the machine. Piece by piece she strengthened it, shaping it into something greater. The glow spread further, creating a field of warmth and safety that pushed back the machines that tried to return. She lived there, not as a fugitive anymore, but as a builder, her hands weaving together human tools and alien shards, her heart carrying Daniel's memory. She kept the carved wooden bird by her side, a reminder of the man who had believed in her dream. At night she looked up at the stars, whispering their names, both human and alien, her voice soft, her heart filled with longing, but also with hope. She imagined Daniel's voice beside her, telling stories, laughing again. She whispered to the sky, "I not alone." News spread quietly across the human world. Strange lights in the forest, drones destroyed, machines silenced. Governments whispered of alien technology, of danger and opportunity, but no soldier who entered that forest returned. The machine's glow kept them out, a barrier of protection, a shield for the dream. And yet, the girl did not hate them. She remembered Daniel's words. Humanity was more than fear, more than war. She believed his people could learn. One day they would see her not as an enemy, but as a builder, as family. Seasons passed, the forest grew thick around the cave, animals returned, rivers ran clear, life bloomed where once there was only ruin. The machine pulsed steady, guarding the place, and the girl grew stronger, her glow brighter than before. Sometimes, she would sit by the oak tree where Daniel rested, speaking softly to him, telling him what she built, what she learned, how she was not giving up. She pressed her hand to the soil and whispered, "I keep promise." One evening, as stars filled the sky, she stood before the machine, her silver eyes burning with determination. She whispered, "This not end, this beginning." The machine responded, its glow spreading further, touching the forest, reaching the sky, sending a silent signal into the stars. Somewhere, beyond distant galaxies, others might hear it. Perhaps her people, perhaps new ones. But this time, she was ready. She would not run. She would not hide, she would build. And so, the story of a widowed human and a lost alien girl did not end in silence. It began with sacrifice and grief, but it grew into a future, into a dream no enemy could destroy. The girl looked once more at the oak tree, whispering softly, "Daniel, family forever." Then she turned back to the glowing machine, her hands ready, her heart strong. The future had been born, and it was only the beginning.